So let's take a look at the front squat and discuss the execution of it. So first, let's play the video. So that's a front squat. This was a maximal lift for Riley, so this was a good front squat, but let's look at some of the details of the execution. All right, so you want to unrack the bar. So she unracks the bar. Before you unrack the bar, you want to be really tight. You want to get the elbows high. You want to get positioned well. You want to have your core tight and braced. Really important. Some other key elements, a belt. Usually after my lifters have been lifting for a while, I let them use a belt for like over 90% kind of lifts, but I don't like them to be reliant on that for really frequently for non kind of near rep maxes. We won't use a belt, and I think that's really good for the first year or two of a lifter to not rely or use a belt. So that's kind of another discussion, but I figured I'd throw that in there. So front squat, something to look out for is we can see as the bar goes down, the elbows need to be always high. See this? See how she pushes those up, her arms? So elbows here need to be high. That's a really common. We see a little bit better there. Her elbows are high. The bar's resting on her shoulder, kind of back in her throat area. She's got her elbows high and her shoulders kind of up a little bit to keep her from choking on that bar. But we see her elbows are up, particularly in the bottom position. This is the common thing I see with lifters in the beginning is that I'm yelling about is elbows up, and you can see she does a good job here. She knows that's really important here. So that's going to be a common thing to look for. All right, so that's elbows up is probably the most common thing I'm cueing in front squat. So let's take a look. What's the right depth? So if we look at her depth here, some people go a little bit lower than she does, but for her flexibility and her body type, this is pretty low, and we see that bottom position. If we look at that, she's pretty low. She's got her, let's take it better. So she's got her hamstrings resting on her calves there. So that's really low for her. A common thing I see and a common thing I worked on myself with some of my lifters is you don't want to get so low that you lose tension and bottom out. So she's low, but she's still creating tension there. You'll see some lifters kind of bottom out and they lose core and back, then it's really hard for them to get up. So I want them to be below parallel, and I want the hamstrings touching the calves. That's a good lift here. So that's something to note. Like there is such a thing as too deep. I would say if you go too deep, that you lose tension. That's important. I can't see any other front squat execution issues. A common other thing I see is maybe people shifting their feet. You have to remain flat-footed in the squat the whole time. I just kind of tell people flat-footed, even foot pressure, whole foot's contacting the ground the whole time. So we're there. These are just some common things I want to go over. Each individual has some unique considerations for squats. Common things I see overall when people start. Probably I'm going to do a quick assessment. A lot of people have tighter ankles, so some ankle mobility work can be helpful, particularly in the front squat. Other things, people's quads are tight, so maybe they have some stretches for the legs and hips. A lot of times I think people overdo in terms of mobility. If you have some issues that need addressed by a physical therapist because you have pain, that's one thing. But a lot of times, a lot of lifters just need more squatting, more overhead squatting, but the weight has to be very light. It could be the PVC, it could be the bar, and you just have to develop good movement patterns, and you need to develop good movement with a very light weight and good depth and good everything, and that's what will kind of provide that flexibility and that mobility in those positions over time. All right, that's the front squat.